Hello friends, and welcome to another figure study where I'm taking a look at something a little bit smaller and less unwieldy than a Titan class figure, though still not actually small, but we'll get into that in a minute. And that is Ocular Max Incursus, which is the Ocular Max slash Mastermind Creations, because they're both effectively the same thing, version of Onslaught. And it's funny, I didn't have any real interest in this set, but Incursus specifically looked pretty fun, and I was kind of like, oh, he looks neat, and the combined mode actually looks pretty cool, so let me get this one and see how I feel about it. Now I've got all 4 limbs on pre-order, so I guess that tells you all you need to know about that. But yeah, Incursus is a very fun figure. He's third-party, he's meant to be, I believe, masterpiece-ish, at least in scale, I don't freaking know. But he's fun. He's very fun to mess with, and I also really appreciate the fact that... Ooh, thunder. But I also appreciate the fact that this is from that, like, all built-in combiner that Ocular Max is doing, and I really like what they're doing with that. So basically, Incursus here, or Onslaught, is all you need for the torso, and then their Swindle is all you need for that leg. You don't need, like, an extra foot piece or anything like that. Their Brawl, its own self-contained leg. Blast Off, self-contained arm. Vortex, self-contained arm. Like, the fists and foot bits are actually built into the individual figures. It's very cool. They do have an upgrade kit for it that gives you, like, new feet and new combined mode chest options, and a new head, I believe. Just in case anyone's wondering about that, as of this recording, I have zero interest in that upgrade kit, because in addition to just being fun, the thing that drew me to this set in general is the idea that everything is self-contained. So when they're in their individual robot modes and their individual vehicle modes, I don't have to worry about combiner hands and feet and whatever just kind of sitting off to the side or being awkwardly incorporated into things. So we're just taking a look at Incursus, but just don't expect me to be getting the upgrade kit. It's possible I might in the future, but as I said, right now, no interest in it whatsoever. But moving past all of that and getting to Incursus himself, this is a very onslaughty vehicle mode. I love that they did like the extremely dark blue and the dark, almost olive brown-green combination for some of the added bits, which may not be 100% accurate to the toy, but it definitely feels very accurate to the toy. And I mean, I never actually owned Onslaught myself, but there was a friend of mine who owned an Onslaught, and I would mess with Onslaught sometimes when I visited his house, so this kind of reminds me of that. And again, it's a fun figure. I like all the detailing, but I also like the functionality, like the fact that you've got this bit here that lets the trailer for the truck pivot. But if you don't want to have that, if you just want it to be like a straight truck that doesn't bend, you can push this in and then either leave it like this, which is what I prefer because these things are kind of a pain to get out, or you can flip these in and they will peg in there and more solidly lock all of this together. So now you've got just the straight flatbed truck mode with no extra bits, like no extra functionality. And I like that you have those options. It's very cool. He also has, as you can probably tell, the giant cannon on top, which can go up and down, it can pivot around, and it's a good time. I also have his rifle plugged in there because in a rare turn of events I actually kind of figured why not talk about the guns, but I'm just going to pull this out here, and it pegs in over this here, and then some bits kind of slot in to the either side here. This is where it pegs in, this is where it slots in, these bits, so you just kind of line it up, put it in. And yeah, this is, it's not a particularly interesting looking gun. I mean, the shape is interesting. It's definitely unconventional with how big it is back here, and kind of the 2 barrels, but very different positioning, so it has this very odd kind of shape to it. The thing that kind of disappoints me about this is there's no paint on it whatsoever. I mean, I don't think it necessarily needs it, but it would have been nice. But then who knows how much of this is going to get covered up if it gets incorporated into like a combined mode cannon, so yeah, we'll just be done with that for now. But as I was saying, this does pivot around and up and down, and it's just a fun little playable truck that rolls pretty well when it's on a, I guess let's call it a solid surface and not like this thing that kind of shifts around a little bit. There's lots and lots of details here, like the tail lights, lots of molded bits. I'm assuming these are meant to be like doors that pull down and there's like supplies supposed to be stored in there or something. Some nice molding up here. Of course, there are a lot of visible hinges and whatnot, which I feel like is excusable given all of the engineering that went into this thing. It's the vehicle, it's the robot, it's the combined mode torso, and it needed to be all of those things without any extra parts being brought in, so I'm okay with that. Anyway, you can see rivet detailing along the top here, and for some reason you can open the hatch and it doesn't do anything. There's like this detailing in here, but nothing moves, nothing shifts around, there's no storage thing here. It's just a hatch that opens, and I don't really know why they did that. The cannons are a very nice silver color, and I like how they have this kind of like bell-bottom flare at the end. I don't know why, but that just makes them feel more powerful to me. Though now that I'm looking at them, I am noticing, these turn, these unpeg? Interesting. I did not know that happens, but okay, there we go. So it looks like the little ends of the barrels can unplug for some reason. And then the actual truck cab itself also has some nice molding, but again, the visible hinges and everything everywhere. And I like how it kind of does that thing that, from what I can remember and from what I've seen in pictures, that the original toy did, which is have this weird, completely ineffective camo pattern on just the hood of the truck. None of the rest of the truck has that black camo pattern on it, and it's black on dark blue, so it seems even more pointless, but I like that it homages that. I don't know, it charms me. And then the front grille, you've got some very nice silver detailing for the fender and a little bit in the grille there around the headlights. I believe the headlights are also translucent plastic, and a little bit of red in the front there. It's a nice time. It's a nice deco. Simple, but effective, I think. And of course, they painted the rims silver. The side mirrors are also painted silver, which is unnecessary, but I appreciate it. Very playable. I like the detailing. It's just a fun toy. Anyway, size-wise, it's not a small truck. I mean, the cab, yes, the cab's not huge compared to, say, a car, but the actual truck in itself, including like the flatbed in the back and everything, pretty sizable. And here he is with the duck tank. Okay, I think I've mentioned this in previous videos. Want to go over it again. I'm not a fan of when a channel has, like, say, a 5-figure combiner to go through, and all of those figures are in hand, and they break them up one at a time, one video each. So I try to group everything together. In the case of Incursus and Ocular Max's Bruticus in general, I don't have that luxury because I don't have all 5 figures. I only have Incursus right now, so that's why I'm doing just the individual video on him. If I get the other figures in together, I'll try to group them together as much as I can. But I also want to say that I'm going to be saving the combined mode video for its own thing. And in that video, that's where I'm going to do the transformations into the combined mode bits. So I'm not going to do torso mode for Incursus in this video, I'm just going to go straight into the robot mode because, in my mind, this video is specifically dedicated to Incursus as a standalone toy. If you were hoping to see the combined mode torso transformation in this video, I'm sorry, but not going to happen. So with that out of the way, let's turn this guy into a standalone humanoid robot. Here we have Ocular Max's Incursus, or Onslaught, in robot mode, and I love this. There are just a couple of things that do bug me a little bit about this robot mode, but I really do love this. This is fun, it's playable, it just kind of feels like a toy meant for a big kid. It's got a little bit more intricacy, it's, I guess you could say, a little bit more fiddly, more detailed, more articulation. It's huge, but it still feels durable, it feels playable. The engineering isn't absurd, it's not like a fiddly mess, and I absolutely love that. I will say, and you can probably tell just from looking at this guy, the proportions are a little bit not great. I'm all for Onslaught being a bulky, behemoth-looking thing, and that's what he looks like here. But his torso is like weirdly boxy and separated in a strange place, which is entirely because of the sculpting and whatnot and the engineering, I believe. But I just feel like if his waist here was a little bit narrower, like if these bits came in to where the little hip skirt pieces are, rather than sticking out as far as they do, I feel like his waist would feel a little bit slimmer. Because his torso up here, the width and everything seems fine, but like down here, this just sticks out a little bit too wide. And also, because of the way that his pelvis area is separated out with color, it makes it feel like his waist ends up here, but it actually ends down here. It feels a little bit proportionally off. It feels like he's got this giant potato torso with these limbs kind of sticking off of it. Doesn't put me off the toy at all. I love this thing, but those bits, they bug me a little bit. And this bit, like just this section seeming like it's going up too far, taking up too much of the torso, that's just down to where the color placement is. It's got nothing to do with the engineering. It's just how it comes out to the sides that's like that. I feel like maybe they could have, had these lips for the truck mode just not stick out as far. Maybe have them taper in instead of flaring out, and that probably would have addressed the issue for me, but it is what it is. I guess while I'm talking issues, I might as well get the rest of the issues out of the way. And again, I want to state, before people start angrily typing at me, these are issues that I have with the figure, but I still absolutely love this figure. These are just some of the things that do kind of bug me a little bit. So, other thing that kind of bugs me, these flaps here, the ones that fold out for the transformation, I understand why they fold out, because that definitely is necessary to free this up and kind of change the look, make the bicep look a little bit better, that kind of thing. Problem is, they stick out weirdly on the inside of the arm, and so they push up against the tire if you're trying to bring his arms down. So you can see the tire rotates freely. You bring this down, now it doesn't want to roll. And I worry that that will like press into the plastic and possibly damage it. I don't really care if there are a couple of divots in my tires. It's fine, but it just seems like a weird oversight, He can't bring his arms down all the way because of how all of this works. So I kind of feel like maybe they could have figured out a way to handle this flap a little differently. The actual not being able to bring his arms down doesn't bother me too much because he is like a big bruiser type dude, so fine, whatever. It's just the fact that it's like pressing into the tires when you try to have his arms straight down that kind of concerns me a little bit. And the last thing that kind of bugs me with this guy's engineering is the way that his arms are set up. And this is something that I've seen mentioned, I think, briefly in Pia's video, but then I've seen other videos on this guy where people don't seem to talk about it, so I don't understand why they don't. This is all you get for bicep rotation when this thing is where it is. Like, that's all you get. If you want to be able to rotate his bicep more freely, you basically have to angle this out, and then you can get more of a bicep rotation, a lot more, but still not perfect because this thing's butting into it. So then you can disconnect this and bring this piece up, and that gives you a complete bicep rotation, but then he's got this kind of shoulder chunk hanging out up here, and this is kind of loose and it kind of flops around. It's a little bit, yeah, I think they could have handled this differently. Also, this moves for some reason. I don't really understand why, because it's not a part of the truck mode and it's not a part of the combined torso mode. Maybe it's meant to allow you to angle it out so that it plugs in there still, but it really doesn't work because of this combiner port chunk in the way. So essentially all you can do is angle these bits out, and that gives you a little bit more inward and outward bicep rotation. Again, not a deal breaker. There are ways around it. It's just a little bit disappointing given all of the other cleverness that went into the engineering of this figure. But now that my griping is done, like I said, I freaking love this toy. This thing is a lot of fun. I'm going to try not to repeat myself too terribly with how it's, fun to mess with, easy transformation, but still gets the job done, etc., etc. But just look at this thing. This looks amazing. The proportions are definitely a bit off, in particular in the chest and torso area, but that doesn't bother me. Like I said, he just feels like a big, beefy juggernaut bruiser type. He's got big chunky legs, big chunky arms, a little too chunky of a torso midsection, but it's fine. The head's great, which we'll look at in more detail in a second, and the colors here are fantastic. Once again, it's that really dark blue with that olive green brown color, and then like a little bit of this either really dark gray or black, or the thighs and the hands, and then you get a little bit more of that just brought in by the tires. Yeah, they're just the tires, but they do add a little bit more of that color to it. And I also like that he's got these silver accents in his pelvis area that kind of works in conjunction with the silver accents here, which are actually from the combined mode pieces. In particular, this is like the front pelvis hip skirt section of the combined mode that is tucked up into his torso. So I like how these kind of help to bring these accents into the whole design, and it makes it feel less like these are just combined mode bits that you can just see hanging out in his stomach. I also love how he's just got this big pectoral plate thing. It's so unnecessary, but I love it. Detailing wise, there's not a whole lot in terms of intricate sculpting, but I kind of prefer it that way. It gets the look and point across. I do feel like maybe these bits here could do with a little bit of color, but I also don't know how accurate that is to the toy, which is the whole point of what they're homaging here. So maybe that's supposed to be left blank, but I don't know. I think it would have been nice to have a little bit more color in there. I like that they did paint the kneecaps that same kind of brown color, and little knee pads as well. There's the silver details I was talking about before, and in here, the arms. It does feel like maybe he could do with a little bit of paint in like the shoulders or on the forearm here, but like it doesn't bother me as much as it does on the shins, because one entire side of the arm is this olive color, and I think that's meant to homage the toy, and that's totally cool. It's just kind of I don't know, like when you can see this color a little bit when you're looking at it from the front, the lack of paint up here doesn't really bother me. And I say lack of paint, but I totally acknowledge that that may actually be 100% accurate to the cartoon or to the toy. I don't know. I do appreciate, though, how the forearm detail here, this color, like this bit right in here, is actually a slightly lighter shade of that olive, and also up here, where it's like just a slightly lighter shade, a slightly different tone than the rest of it. I kind of feel like it would be cool if they did that with other details throughout this figure, like maybe have a slightly lighter, slightly darker blue in a few places, or maybe a little bit of black. As for the head, that is an Onslaught-y head. It's kind of that slightly narrow, smushed in kind of angry bean that I've come to recognize as Onslaught. Plus he's got that kind of telltale visor where it's like the mouth plate kind of comes down with the shape of the helmet and then goes up again. So instead of being a solid triangle or just a line going across for his eyes, he's got that dual angry downward triangle design that kind of makes it seem like it could work as individual eyes or one big visor. Though I do know that his head, I believe it's the toy, could also be the cartoon, I don't know, but I think it said it's supposed to be black and not this dark blue color. I don't really care. I think it looks fine like this, though if it was black I wouldn't complain either. But it's a good looking head, and I like how it's kind of like the typical Onslaught shape and face design and all of that, but then at the same time there's just a little bit more in terms of beefy angles that they added to it in a few places. Moving the big guy back here, let's get him set up for size comparisons. And I mean, when I say big guy, I mean he's a big guy. I knew when I had him in the mail he was going to be a big fellow, but it's, again, one of those things you don't fully appreciate until you actually get him in hand, because, I mean, look at this thing. Friggin' Deluxe doesn't even come up to his waist. Either of the things that you would count as his waist. And just for the heck of it, because my masterpiece alike shelf is right next to where I'm filming, let's move these guys over a little bit, but here he is next to Fans Toys Grinder, and he's actually a little bit taller than Grinder. Here he is with Masterpiece Soundwave, who I know is not MP10 height. MP10 is a little bit taller, but it kind of gives you a vague idea. Here he is with Fans Toys Road King, their Motormaster, and he is also actually a little bit taller than Road King. Here he is with DX9's Gewalt. I don't want to make promises, but I hope to someday do a video on him. Someday, I hope. Don't hold me to that. Here he is next to Masterpiece G2 Sideswipe, just in case you were curious. And here he is with the Duck Tank. And with that, I bring this nightmare edition of trying to do the size comparisons without constantly bumping the freaking camera to a close. Getting a little frustrated with myself. There we've got Incursus, but before we wrap things up, let's give him his gun. So it does the Masterpiece thing, tab, slot in the hand. And this just slots into, not this bit, but there's actually this kind of groove right in the palm here. There's a slot kind of back in there as well, and that's where this slots into, and this kind of slides into that space there. So that goes in like that and keeps the gun nice and snug in his hand. It looks good. It adds a little bit more color to the primarily blue and olive pattern that we've got going here. I do wish that there was some color on this, but like I said, it might not matter for combined mode, so who knows? Not a deal breaker either way, because you know me, I'm not huge on accessories, so it doesn't really bother me. Anyway, that is gonna do it for Ocular Max Incursus. This right here, as just a self-contained toy, I think is great. Definitely some little nitpicks here and there with regards to his style and the paint and proportional stuff, but I just love this thing. It's so fun to mess with. So that is going to do it for my thoughts on Ocular Max Incursus, aka Bruticus. What do you all think of this guy? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.